Zamazenta and Calyrex Shadow Rider have just placed first and second in the Victory Road April Challenge Part 2. Let's talk about it. So the first thing I want to talk about is the usage of their restricted Pokemon. This is the top usage going by day 1, who is the most popular Pokemon brought to the tournament, and going down. And then of course, it does show their day 2 usage, which is important because this is showing basically how these Pokemon did on the first day. If the number is higher, then that means more of those teams were winning. If the number is lower, then that means more of those teams were losing. So, most popular Pokemon being Calyrex Shadow Rider, the fastest restricted Pokemon, hits like a truck. If it picks up KOs, it just gets stronger. Easy to snowball, easy to pilot. It was the most popular one going into day 1, and by day 2, still the most popular Pokemon. And going from 34.1 to 43% is pretty significant, so very high win percentage here. Next, we have Miraidon going from 29.5 to 30, so staying about the same. Miraidon's very solid, very good to set terrain control, one of the fastest Pokemon in the format. But probably more impressive here is Koraidon, actually starting at 25.8. and bopping up to 32%. And if I had to guess, that is probably because Koraidon has a lot of good matchups. Just going based on not taking Terra into consideration, it can hit Calyrex Ice Rider for a lot of damage. It can hit Zamazenta for a lot of damage. If you play it around it correctly, Kyogre kind of becomes useless. Once Koraidon switches in, it can hit Zacian for a one-hit KO, it can hit Terrapagos for a one-hit KO, assuming that its Terra Shell is broken or it's transformed already. Just looking at these top restricted Pokemon, it has a good matchup into at least half of them. And then depending on if you're able to get a Flame Charge going, it then has a good matchup into pretty much everything else. Koraidon's very good. We'll talk about this later, but a lot of potential partners for it. Now moving forward, we have Lunala, and let's talk about these two together. Lunala and Calyrex Ice Rider. Both of them starting at 25.8 and 19.7, moving down to 22 and 16. Again, these Pokemon aren't bad by any means. They just, their players that used them did a little worse than some of these Pokemon up here. Then we have Zamazenta, also has a huge jump up, so 19.3% going into day 1. Day 2, 27%. So a lot of Zamazenta players did really well. Kyogre did a little worse, but still did fine, 12.9 to 11. Zacian, not so great, 12.9% starting in day 1, 5% in day 2. I've said this before, I'll say it again, I don't think Zacian is overall a great restricted. I think Zacian overall is just a worse Koraidon and offers less than Koraidon does. The one situation where I think Zacian makes sense and is acceptable and is good is when you pair it up with Kyogre. You do not want Koraidon to mess up your rain synergy. I think Koraidon and Zacian otherwise are kind of fighting for that same role of being a fast, strong hitting, single target physical attacker. And then we have Terrapagos, 11% in day 1, 11% day 2, kind of like Miraidon, just about the same. And then Groudon sadly started with 3% and 0% of them made it into day 2. So once again, Groudon is not looking so hot right now. And then we've got our most popular Pokemon to, I don't think anyone's surprised, being Incineroar, Urshifu, and Rillaboom all in the top 3. And all doing pretty good. Rillaboom doing probably exceptionally well here, 38%. Incineroar being about the same. He dipped down 2 percentage points. Same with Urshifu. The only thing is that with some of these Pokemon, they're just on so many teams that it's not weird that they might dip a couple percentages. Now, if Incineroar started at 40% and it was something like 20, 15%, that would be kind of concerning. But other than that, these 3 are probably always going to be at the top here. Iron Hands being the next. Not super surprising, though he didn't have a very good conversion rate. But yeah, we can kind of move on here if we want to take a glance at these. But I'm not seeing anything super surprising. I do like seeing Bourbonnet here. And he's doing really well, 11% to 16%. I'm glad people are picking up on that because he is just very good. Fluttermane, 19% to 27%. That's a great conversion rate. Chiyu, basically the same thing, 22.3 to 27. Yeah, nothing. Oh, Champow's having a good conversion rate, 6.4 to 14%. Wouldn't be surprised if we see that pick up later. And then other than that, everything's looking pretty normal. Okay, so let's take a look at our most popular pairings here. Calyrex, Shadow Rider, and Zacian. Number 1 pairing, 15% to 19%. Lunala, Koraidon, interesting. So they're the second most popular pairing. That's kind of surprising to me. Not super surprised that it's doing well, but I am kind of surprised that many people are playing it. Calyrex Ice plus Miraidon, 11.7 to 14. Another great conversion rate there. That's the team I've been featuring on the channel recently. Lunala, Miraidon. Apparently that's not doing so hot, 7.6 to 3%. Kyogre and Zacian. Wow, this one's real rough. Okay, so I was just actually saying that this is probably the way you'd want to run. If you're playing Zacian, this is the way you'd want to run it. I do think that this is a fine pairing, but apparently in this tournament, not so much, because 19 players went into day 1. It was the 5th most popular combo, and 0% made it into day 2. That's kind of shocking. And then we've got Cali Shadow plus Koraidon, 6% to 11%. That's pretty good. Cali Shadow plus Terrapagos, 5.6 to 5. A little dip there, but there's only 2 people, so it's about the same realistically. If this was 3, then this would be what would it be? 7.5%. So smaller numbers here kind of mess with things a little bit, but Cali Shadow plus Miraidon, about the same. Terrapagos plus Koraidon. We had 1, so again, take that as you will if this person just wasn't there. Now, this person was in the top 8, so I do think this is solid, but if we had 1 more person, again, we're dealing with smaller numbers here, but let's just be fair. 4.2% to 3% dipped down a little bit. And then we had Miraidon and Zamazenta, which is a pairing I have not thought about at all. 2.3% to 5%. So pretty cool to see some of these. Definitely Koraidon Lunala is the one catching my eye the most, because I've seen people play it, but I have not personally given it too much thought, and maybe now I'll start paying attention a little bit more. So let's take a look at our top 8. First place team is Zamazenta and Calyrex Shadow Rider. Calyrex Shadow Rider, this was the set I was basically running on my Terrapagos team. Encore, very powerful move. Psychic hits a lot of strong restricted Pokemons like Koraidon. Koraidon being really popular in the tournament, I'm not surprised that this is on here. Especially if they had a few of those matchups, because this just sits Koraidon like a truck. And then if you force Terra, that's great too. Zamazenta, I think the most prominent thing I'm seeing here is that it's Ghost Terra, which is, you might think that's kind of bad because Calyrex Shadow Rider is so popular, but if you are thinking you're going to run into the mirror match a lot here, which it was the most popular restricted duo, you can go Terra Ghost. The Zamazenta can't really hurt you anymore, and then you just spam Wide Guard, and the Calyrex Shadow Rider can't hurt you that much either. So it kind of makes sense overall. And then you have a Tornadus with Rain Dance and an Urshifu Rapid Strike as probably a little backup mode, and to help give your team Tailwind in case you're doing, again, the mirror match and you want the fastest Pokemon. Rillaboom for a Fake Out. And then we have Qianpao with Life Orb, because the Calyrex does have the Focus Sash. Protect, Stellar Terra, which is interesting. And Ice Shard plus Sucker Punch. Cool combination. I'm assuming that the Qianpao gives some of these physical Pokemon certain KOs that they don't normally have. In Regulation G, we do know that Zamazenta plus Qianpao, that was a popular combo, and that if you give enough like defense investment into the Zamazenta, that picks up a certain amount of KOs because of the way body press is calculated. It works with Qianpao's ability really well. But yeah, this just looks like a solid team. Looks like it's evolved a little bit based on the last time we saw it. It was basically like Rillaboom plus Incineroar or Urshifu, just like standard kind of balance setup. Now we have the Tornadus and we have the Qianpao. So a little bit more, going on here. But overall, I think the biggest thing is this Terragos Zamazenta to deal with the mirror match a little bit better. And then the Encore, the way I would play Encore is if you're dealing with another Zamazenta that's like using Wide Guard, since you have Psychic, you can Encore the Zamazenta into Wide Guard. It's stuck sitting there using that move, so then you just switch over to your single target moves and ignore the Zamazenta until they decide to switch out after that. So good stuff. Second place team is another Calyrex Shadow Zamazenta. This Zamazenta is running Terra Water. The Calyrex Shadow on this team is Giga Drain plus Nasty Plot, which in Regulation G was always a little scary to face, especially when you're playing like closed team sheet. Apparently it's good here too. We have a Smeargle with Terra Ghost, Fake Out, Spore, Follow Me, and Wide Guard. I think Wide Guard is definitely the way to go on this type of team, and maybe in general if we're going to play Smeargle in Regulation I. It is interesting that they have Wide Guard on 2 of the Pokemon, so if you're using spread moves as your main way of winning games, that's going to be pretty hard to break through. We have an Incineroar with Taunt, Parting Shot, Fake Out, Knockoff. Makes a lot of sense. You can, taunt a Wide Guard user or just anything else like an Amoonguss that you don't want to have to deal with. Rillaboom, Incineroar combination is good for just spamming Fake Out and pivoting in and out, getting that protection for your other Pokemon. And then a Ogerpon with Grassy Glide to combo with the Grassy Surge, the Grassy terrain. And honestly, just having Heart Flame is almost like having, I wouldn't say he's like another restricted, but you use Terra on this guy and he's going to hit like a truck. So this combination is very strong too. And of course, if you don't want him to hit like a truck, you can just use Follow Me, and that's another way to protect one of your restricteds. So overall, looks like a solid team. Kind of surprised to see Smeargle up here, but maybe Smeargle is better than I was thinking it was initially. But then again, I'm not like blown away by it either. I mean, he's got Fake Out, he's got Spore. That sounds pretty good to me. All right, our third place team is a Terrapagos with Earth Power, Calm Mind, Leftovers, and a Koraidon, Flare Blitz, Close Combat, Flame Charge with the Life Orb. So let's take a look here. Okay, cool. So this is what I was kind of talking about in the last April challenge, is that I think there was another team like this, but it was basically just a balanced team, and they were just using the Koraidon as a very strong physical attacker. You could probably abandon Terrapagos altogether with this style if you want to lean into your Sun mode a little bit. We do have a Fluttermane and a Raging Bolt. Raging Bolt should be really strong once he is in the Sun in this situation. Fluttermane's going to be very fast, so you could use your Icy Wind for speed support. I think some people might look at this initially and be like, isn't this weird because you have your Terrapagos who's going to get rid of the Sun. I just wouldn't think about this team as if it's like a hard Sun team. It's more like this like support mode. So the Sun can come in and help like just dunk on teams that are really trying to rely on rain, like Kyogre, let's say. But you don't have to lead Koraidon and Terrapagos. In fact, most times I'm playing Terrapagos, I'm leading like a Fake Out Pokemon next to him. So you can lead Koraidon. That doesn't mean that Koraidon's going to stay there the whole time. In some cases, it might even be nice for Terrapagos to get rid of the Sun, because that means that if Koraidon switches in and then back out again, that resets the Sun, and that the Sun is going to be there for 5 turns from that point forward. So any games that keep this in mind. If Koraidon comes out turn 1, all you have to do is protect every other turn, and then Koraidon only gets 2 turns to actually do stuff in the Sun. So if you reset the Sun, if you come in, Terrapagos gets rid of the Sun, or if you switch out, Terrapagos gets rid of the Sun, and then you come back in, that's a whole another 5 turns of Sun to play with. So it's really not as bad as some people think. Now, if this was something where, like, let's say the old Kyogre team that would use Calm Mind and set up, it didn't really want to switch out, that would be pretty bad to combine with Terrapagos. But something like this, where Koraidon's really just supposed to be really fast, hit like a truck, can switch out without really caring too much. Totally fine, I think, in my opinion. And then with these other Pokemon here, I could very well see a scenario where you leave Terrapagos behind if you really don't think that this game plan of Calm Mind setup is going to work out so well. And a lot of the times I was playing Terrapagos with my Calyrex Shadow team, I wouldn't even need to bring Calyrex Shadow in. He still felt really good as a support option with his Encore and being so fast. But there are other times where having a Koraidon in the back instead could have been really strong. So I think this has a lot of potential, and I think at first you might think there's like anti-synergy here, not a good idea, but in reality it's really not as bad as it probably seems. Okay, our fourth place team is Koraidon and Lunala. This one I'm definitely interested in taking a look at. We have the Koraidon set that we had previously. This is the one kind of popularized by Wolf Glick. Flare Blitz, Flame Charge, Close Combat, Life Orb. And then Lunala has Trick Room, Wide Guard, Meteor Beam, Moongeist Beam. So yeah, Lunala has a lot of moves that could be potentially really good. This one seems generally kind of support driven, but also if it uses its Meteor Beam, it can now threaten some pretty big damage with the Moongeist Beam. It is a little scary here because if you do blow your Meteor Beam, then you get walled by normal types unless you want to start using charging attacks here, like just every other turn doing damage with Meteor Beam. But I mean, that's not the worst if they can't KO you that turn. Got Chiyu with Scarf, which makes sense with Koraidon. It's also a pretty good answer into Calyrex Shadow most of the time. Ursaluna is your threat if you want to set up that Trick Room that you have. This might also be to kind of just block opposing Trick Room, but probably good to have this option here. Brute Bonnet, very strong in the sun, also very good if you did want to set up the Trick Room. You can use your Rage Powder to draw attacks away from Lunala. You could also just Spore a Pokemon if you know that the two Pokemon on the other side of the field aren't threatening a knockout. And we've got Flutter Mane for speed control, and of course going to get that Sun boost as well. So overall this looks solid. I am interested to know if they use Trick Room most of the time. I would guess not. I'm wondering if like it's mostly for the Cali Shadow matchups maybe? Because even though Koraidon's very fast, if you have Cali Shadow, well, I guess you could, yeah, it is kind of interesting. I mean, it looks solid to me. I'm sure they have their lines figured out. It looks like you have a ton of options. I'm just not sure how often you use the Ursaluna. It could be a lot, or it could be fairly infrequent, but yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those teams where in team preview, you just don't know what direction they're gonna go in. You could like lead something to try to deny the Trick Room, and then they might just like lead Koraidon, Chiyu, and have faster Pokemon than you, and then you could just lose on lead a lot of the time. So that is a pretty cool feature of the team, I gotta say. And then even if they do try to counter you and you brought the stuff, I mean, setting Trick Room is still scary when it's Lunala in front of you. So looks pretty solid, and a lot of cool options here. Fifth place team is another Terrapagos. This is classic Calm Mind Earth Power set. This Cali Shadow is Focus Sash, but it has Will-O-Wisp and Pollen Puff. So that's kind of cool. Pollen Puff can be used offensively because its base damage is actually pretty strong. But it can also be used obviously to heal up Terrapagos if it's taken too much damage. And then Will-O-Wisp makes it so Zamazenta really doesn't hit Terrapagos as hard, not nearly as hard anymore. Very solid there. Flutter Mane having Taunt and Thunder Wave also is kind of scary for Zamazenta. No Protect is kind of ballsy, but I mean totally works. And then Cornerstone Ogerpon, follow me. Ogerpon's very prominent so far. It's almost like everybody's sixth Pokemon, it seems like a lot of the time. I have not played around with it too much, but I think everyone knows what Ogerpon's doing. And then If you're running Combine Terrapagos, you're pretty much always going to use Rillaboom Incineroar. Rocky Helmet's great because it helps you deal with the Urshifu, which is one of your main threats. And the chip damage into something like Zamazenta even is pretty great too. Okay. And then we've got our 6th place team. This is Calyrex Shadow Rider plus Koraidon. This is actually the first team I started building around in Regulation I. And it's got 4 of the same Pokemon. So I had Brute Bonnet, Chi-Yu, Calyrex Shadow, and Koraidon. Slightly different sets overall, but this one has an Indeedee, which is very strong because they don't have any Fake Out Pokemon on this team. So if you're not using Fake Out, you might as well have something that's going to block it and just block priority in general. So in this case, it's going to be Indeedee with Trick Room, Helping Hand, Follow Me, and Psychic, and then Expanding Force on the Calyrex Shadow Rider. The only thing that's scary about this setup is if you have the terrain set up, Calyrex Shadow Rider cannot damage something if the other opponent has a Wide Guard Pokemon. So only thing that you have to really worry about, I'm sure that they have some sort of game plan for this because of how high they made it up on the tournament. Maybe you're cautious about setting this up or not. Or maybe you're just going to use Brute Bonnet to put the Wide Guard user to sleep. Maybe they use Wide Guard that one turn, but then you know you're going to eat a sleep that same turn, and then the next turn, Calyrex Shadow Rider's good to go. Definitely one way to deal with the problem. And Brute Bonnet, if this is a defense boosting Brute Bonnet, and you lead Koraidon or you switch Koraidon in, he's not going to take very much damage from Zamazenta, especially if you Terra. If you don't Terra, you should still live the hit, but it's still going to chunk because it's super effective. But if you Terra Water, it's not going to do really anything at all. So, pretty solid there. Whimsicott is interesting to see with Indeedee. Not terrible. Maybe you just don't bring both, or maybe you just don't use Encore, or you obviously can't if you use the Indeedee, but this could be 2 different game plans, or it could be part of the same game plan, but obviously you're just not going to have Encore anymore. But yeah, it looks solid. I think that this pairing is very good. I think Brute Bonnet's very good as well. I almost think like part of the reason Koraidon's very strong is because it allows you to run this really awesome partner Pokemon with it. And then our 7th team is Miraidon Calyrex Ice. Miraidon has the choice specs. Volt Switch, Electro Drift, Dazzling Gleam, Draco Meteor, and then we've got Cali Ice with high horsepower as his secondary attacking move. Terra type Fire, this is pretty standard for Regulation I so far. We have Iron Hands with Drain Punch, Low Kick, Fake Out, Wild Charge. This is pretty typical as well. For Farigiraf with the Electric Seed, Ogerpon, Cornerstone, and Iron Valiant. So I have been using a team with 4 of these Pokemon. The Farigiraf and the Miraidon is a very strong combination, especially into Pokemon team, or especially into teams that have like dual Fake Out users. And Farigiraf stops the Fake Out. He eats the Electric Seed, so he's not holding an item, and his defense goes up, so he doesn't take very much damage from knockoff. And if you just lead Miraidon, Volt Switch out, set Trick Room, there's certain teams that can't deal with that very well. You're going to hit one of the Pokemon really hard with the Volt Switch, almost guaranteed Trick Room up, and then Calyrex Ice Rider is just going to be sitting there, ready to sweep, or whoever you decided to send in next. And then you have Iron Hands with Fake Out as another way to try to support someone setting up Trick Room turn 1. You have Ogerpon with Follow Me. I didn't bother putting Ogerpon on my team, but Follow Me plus Sturdy, very strong way to set up Trick Room. And then the Iron Valiant, in case you want to go with maybe more of a speed mode. I kind of like this, because if you lead like Miraidon Iron Valiant, you have a very powerful offensive fast mode. Also, you can go Iron Valiant just to protect your Calyrex Ice Rider with Wide Guard, or you can go with Coaching. So this is kind of like a dual threat if you're facing something like a Cali Shadow, let's say, you're either going to have to choose, are you going to use Wide Guard, or they're going to have to try to make a decision on if you're going to spam Wide Guard or not, or if you're just going to set up coaching to make the Cali Ice even stronger. So this looks really strong overall. And then our 8th place team is another Cali Ice Miraidon. This one also has the Farigiraf. Everything else is the same except we have water on Cali Ice. We have an Incineroar. That's interesting. So no Iron Hands, but we do have Incineroar with the Assault Vest. Yeah, they must have thought that Incineroar was really important, and that's why we don't have the Iron Hands. My version of the team has Incineroar and the Iron Hands, but my Iron Hands does have the Assault Vest, so maybe there's a very specific reason for this, and you don't really want to run Iron Hands if he doesn't have the Assault Vest. I'm not saying it's impossible, but he is much stronger typically, and most times we see Iron Hands, he does have that item, so taking away the Assault Vest as an option might be part of the reason for all this, or might be part of the reason he's not on the team. And then we have Urshifu Rapid Strike, Focus Sash, definitely a strong option. Obviously we know Rapid Strike threatens a lot of KOs on certain things. With the Stellar Terra, the close combat hits like a truck, threatens Terrapagos very heavily. And then Landorus with Choice Scarf. Terra Water as a defensive option is very good. But yeah, I'd say this very interesting. Seeing the Landorus is probably the most interesting part about it for me. I do think that you threaten a lot of potential KOs with a Glacial Lance plus Sandsear Storm, like double spread move attack combination. But overall, I just think that this core here, these three are very strong. If you throw in a fake out user, whether it's Incineroar, Iron Hands, or both, and that 4 already is really strong, and then these last 2, there's a lot of options. My team, I have Cali Ice, Miraidon, Farigiraf, Incineroar, Iron Hands, and a Ditto, and I've really liked the Ditto so far. But I'd be interested to know exactly. I mean, I already know you're going to bring this into like Miraidon most likely, but I'd be interested exactly what lines they had where the Landorus became really important. But overall, looks very strong. And that's it for the top 8. I'm not going to break down the rest of the teams, but we're just going to take a quick look. So we've got our next Lunala Koraidon, and there's a Ditto and another Brute Bonnet. Love to see that. This is the first Lunala Miraidon with the Rillaboom. So we got 2 different terrains going on here, which is interesting. Got Kyogre and Calyrex Shadow Rider. Very unique so far. I mean, they're both very powerful Pokemon, so I'm not necessarily surprised, but first one to pop up. Next 3 teams are exactly the same as the first place team, I believe. So it looks like this is definitely going to be one of the main ways to play Cali Shadow Zamazenta, at least right now it is. And that's it for the top 14. So very cool. And let's take a peek at the last few here. We've got Miraidon Zamazenta. Oh, this is basically that Joseph Ugarte team with Zamazenta instead of Urshifu, I think. We've got the Dondozo team back again. Koraidon and Cali Shadow with Brute Bonnet again. Koraidon Lunala. So, I think Koraidon stocks are up big time. I think everyone who's dropping Psychic on their Cali Shadows should probably bring it back because he is looking really scary right now. And very good. So, overall, I'd say we haven't moved too far away from where we were with the last April challenge. Things do look a little more streamlined, less wildcard teams kind of breaking through the top here. These all look more refined for sure. I think the Cali Ice and the Miraidon teams are definitely still figuring things out. The fact that we're not really seeing a lot of consistency with how those are built is interesting. I want to see if I can find another one. Oh, okay, this one's got, yeah, I mean, they're all looking pretty different. So I think we're still waiting for someone to crack the code on that one, but I do think it's going to be a contender. And then other than that, it's Calyrex. That's the big takeaway for me. And definitely, if you haven't tried out Brute Bonnet, try him out. And especially if you're using a Calyrex team, because he is super good. That's my other takeaway. Though I've been pushing that for a little while now already. But that's going to be it for this one, guys. Happy battling.